a previous video, I attempted to create some of the dumbest, craziest army lists I could possibly imagine, but in the end, the lists I created were, frankly, extremely mundane. However, since taking 36 Centurions to a 40k tournament, I now believe I have the knowledge and experience of what a real insane army looks like. And so today, I'm going to show you my most insane army ideas for every 40k faction. So you too could experience the absolute hell that is playing a pointless battle stuff certified utterly useless but extremely entertaining 2,000 point army no matter what you collect. First, some quick ground rules. 1. These have to be legal lists that have at least some chance of potentially winning a game, even if that chance is low. Yes, you could make the most insane list for an army if you just include no units, and that could technically win if your opponent just concedes immediately, but stop being so goddamn pedantic. That's my job! Number 2. There is no number 2. That was the only rule. I don't know why I made a list for this. Anyway, I have organized these lists into several categories which ramp up in intensity based on their level of ridiculousness. And so we start with what I consider the passable factions. These are lists that are kind of cool, but for whatever reason, they don't really stand out that much. Either the idea isn't that over the top, or it's daft in a way that's not particularly clever, or they just don't seem like they'd be fun to play. Alternatively, they could be ideas that seem like they'd be a good haha funny joke kind of thing, but end up being infuriating meta staples that give you nightmares about playing against them over and over again in every single event you go to. Speaking of which, now, I love Necrons. They have a lot of really cool, unique models, and their flavor is excellent. But if there was a faction that wrote the book on how to utilize spam lists most efficiently, it would be these ancient, neurotic, squabbling, skeletal automatons. Wouldn't it be hilarious to just spam all the Catan shards? Oh, no, wait, that's actually disgustingly horrific. What about if we spam something like 80 Wraiths? Oh god, please, no more Techno-Wraith bricks. I never want to see a 3-up, 4-up, 5-up that can regenerate models ever again. What about Destroyers? I already did that, and now it's just a dull meta affair. So, incredibly pedestrian, there are actually now 2 detachments that can work with it, and they released an entire battalion box that really suits it. Well, how about just defaulting to the just bring all the big stuff you can with a list containing the Silent King, a Monolith, and a Tesseract Vault? I mean, that's a lot of points. That would be really wild and outlandish. Except, no, wait, I played against that, and I got fucking destroyed. Necrons just do ridiculous-looking lists by default, so you can't really make some silly thing because it will just kind of work. And having lists that actually work is not what we're here for. Emperor's Children is an army that I'm not really familiar with and doesn't have that many data sheets to play with. The best that I could do is make a list that leads into Thorgrim's philosophy of starting on people and proving you're the best, most perfect being in the galaxy, and doing it in the most flamboyant way possible. The Demon Primarch Thorgrim himself tries to compete against Lucius, 6 Demon Princes, and a Defiler, all running solo to try and stack their style meter higher than everyone else. Plus a Lorca Covenus with a massively overinflated ego thinking he's part of the gang and can keep up. He's here because I had some points spare. But I mean, 3 Demon Princes with wings is already the start of most meta Emperor's Children's lists, so this isn't really that inspired. My other idea was just to shove 3 Heldrakes into a list, because I might as well try and put 3 Heldrakes somewhere, and then just put in Defilers, because they're so overpowered right now that they can probably make any list workable to some degree. You can do that with any of the Chaos factions, so that's not really that interesting. Oh, man, Tau. Oh, have I got some ridiculous ideas for you? What about this, okay? What if, all right, get this. What if we do just all Kroot? Wouldn't that be absolutely hilarious? Oh, wait, that's actually insanely good. Okay, well, all right, well, what about this other idea? Okay, what about a Talnar? The big, bulky Forge World Talton. That sounded a lot better written down than saying it out loud. High Town? That's probably better. Anyway, and for shits and giggles, right? Why don't we put 3 Riptides in it? We could call it Triptide. Well, fuck me, I guess. Alright, can't go wrong here. Hear me out. This one, absolutely perfect. What about 3 Khorne Lord of Skull? Oh, god damn it! Fine, you know what? Here's your stupid World Eaters list. Angron, and then no other melee at all. This is for all you players who want to play the melee-focused Blood-Crazed Psychotic Berserker army without any Blood-Crazed Psychotic Berserkers. I love the Nundums, but unlike other units you can spam, you can only take 9 of these leggy ladies, with more than Val taking that up to 10. But there are other options to keep this list having legs for days. Nothing but Walkers, the Penitent Engines and Mortifiers, and then bring a Knight Destroyer to make sure that no feet touch the ground. I had points left over, so I added an Image of Fire, but you may want to put her on a Tactical Rock or something to ensure that she fits with the rest of the army. This list actually does look kind of fun, but it's also not that special. How humorous a spam list is based on what unit you are spamming, and an army of punished heretics in warsuits led by other holy warsuits isn't that out of left field for the sisters, so it's alright. The final faction for this passable category is Imperial Agents. Most insane list you can make for Imperial Agents is any list you make, because it's not a real army, and trying to act like it is a lesson in futility. Agents players aren't real, and they cannot hurt you. What can hurt you is the Mad Case 2.0 from table.stronghold.com. This extremely tough MDF carry case would make an incredible bludgeoning weapon to fend off any would-be attackers, whilst also keeping your minis of any size incredibly safe and secure, thanks to the adjustable trays and the power of magnets. The Mad Case 2.0 also doubles up as a wonderful display case to show off your fantastic minis, as long as you wipe the blood and brains off first, otherwise everything will look slightly red. Right now, you can get up to 25% off using code PAUL25, and there's free shipping to the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. So go right now to table.stronghold.com using the links below, and thanks again to Table Stronghold for sponsoring. Next up is the entertaining category. These are lists that are relatively silly, but also seem like they'd actually be fun to try and run. And they may even be viable and could win a game without being overbearing. Not this one, though. This list is just completely stupid. I think outside of slapping a Titan down, this might be the fewest models you can get away with in a 2,000 point list. I'd have put this in passable because it's just absurd and borderline unplayable, but it's Orks. Orks are bloody hilarious and Stompers are awesome, so it makes sense to run two as they're the biggest and therefore the best. Speaking of giant zombie robots, the list that I played against at the South Coast Super Major already looks entertaining enough. Ryan's very aggressive army that destroyed me in under an hour due to a very slight misplay on my part contains everything you could possibly want in a faction focused around giant murder mechs. Although I think trying to take some enhancements in there instead of just going full send with 3 Knight Lancers is a bit of a misstep. There's no reason to be a coward here. Knight Lancers are by far the coolest of the Knights, so this list is now basically perfection. Why have a giant gun that can shoot someone from a distance like some sort of wimpy loser, when you can just run up to them full pelt in a giant mech and stab them in the goddamn face with a massive lance? God, I absolutely love giant zombie robots, man, but hopefully this doesn't become a running theme, otherwise this video is going to get very boring. Custodians have an attachment that allows you to make 2 dreadnoughts into characters, which they should be anyway. Therefore, you can make this absolutely dreadful list containing 11 big, stumpy, shiny, golden badasses. Some people have actually used this attachment with some success, but they use all these other extra dull additions like grab tanks and infantry to try and do actions or screen or not have only 11 models to play with. I actually really do like the look of this list. The enhancements are solid. Having 6 strength 13 AP 2 damage d6 plus 2 attacks with +1 to another charge can really tear through even the toughest of armor. And if everyone else can have the combination of a 4-up invuln with a 5-up feel no pain, then why can't I? I don't generally like Custodians that much, to be honest. Their updated models in the Horus Heresy release do make them stand out more, but this is actually a list I would genuinely like to try, and these dreadnoughts look incredible. This is probably the best way to do dreadnought spam, in my opinion, as long as you're okay with having to get a load of Forge World kits, which I'm not, so this list gets to stay in the realm of my mind and not in reality. And if you thought I was done with making lists that just spam as many chunky lads as humanly possible, then you clearly have not been paying attention. It's 36 Centurions. It has to be, right? It's the reason for my descent into this madness, and out of all the possible spammable units, this one is the most ridiculous. Is it good? No. But is that just because I used the wrong attachment and there are better options? Well, okay, so it's bad. But is it still at least fun? No! So instead, what if you took those Centurions and made them evil? Even though you cannot take nearly as many, making them far inferior as a choice, Obliterators and the new Mutilators are the Centurions of the Chaos Space Marines. So you can pretty much take my normal Screaming Ravens list and one-to-one convert it into a Chaos Space Marines list, especially when you use the Warp Strike Champions attachment that allows you to uppy downy those thick, mutated walking weapons. My Jump Captain becomes a Jump Lord, the Tech Marine that is always too angry to die becomes a bit too angry and is corrupted into a winged Demon Prince with the Mark of Khorne, and the Screaming Ravens Dreadnought character that I still need to make a model and rules for becomes a Defiler. That'll be some fun conversion projects to do at some point. The Vanguard Veterans become Warp Talons, JPIs become Raptors, Blade Guard become Possessed or Chosen, Intercessors to Legionnaires. You can do quite a lot of stuff here. This just looks like a fun army to create, but probably not the best to play. Maybe you could swap out the Defiler for some other chaff units to help, you know, play the game. But also, as of recording, the Defiler is kind of busted and looks badass as hell, so any excuse to get one would be ideal. I have a 1,000 Suns army that could also use a Defiler, so I should just get a Defiler. No, I shouldn't. I already have far too many projects on the backlog, including making the original Voxel the Boomringer character model, the Centurion Chapter Master I've had in my head for nearly a year, this Knight Lancer I got for Christmas, these Necron Destroyer boxes, Skaven Tide. Still, this looks like a fun list that might actually do alright with a bit of tweaking. Is it the most insane list ever? No, not even close. You could throw like 3 Heldrakes in a list with 3 Noctilith Crowns or something, but I wanted an excuse to stroke my own ego, okay? Speaking of stroking my own ego, Next up is the Leagues of Votann with this list. Straight up jacking it. Maximum Steeljacks led by strategists, 3 honk tonks to carry the melee ones in, and an Iron Master to keep the whole thing chugging along. Grand Fast Oath Band also means sticking near the triple land forts gives sustained hits, which pairs really nicely with all of the Steeljack rules. They aren't the toughest things in the world, but the threat of Overwatch is pretty significant, and played right, they could really do some serious damage. Steeljacks are also really awesome looking models, and if nothing else, having 36 of them just to be able to name this list something crass as a joke is entertaining enough for me, because I have the maturity of a 10-year-old. And finally, to round out the entertaining category, we have the Aeldari, which previously would have been yet another spam of heavy chunky inventory, but as that one is something that far too many people have done already, instead, let's pick up the pace with this list. Breaking Wind. I have the maturity of a 10-year-old. With the Wind Rider host attachment, Wind Riders become battle lines, so you can get a hell of a lot of super fast jet bikes into one army, especially with all the varying types of jet bikes like Shining Spears, Shroud Runners, and Warlock Skyrunners. I've played around with this list by dropping some bikes for Vipers, as you could set them up ahead of schedule and uppy-downy them as well, which is very funny. So this is something that might actually be playable if done right, by outmaneuvering your opponent with swift bikes moving back and forth and reappearing across the battlefield so your opponent breaks their ankles. Metaphorically, of course. Unless you really want to win. Next up, we have the nonsense category. These are lists that aren't completely beyond the pale, but are still very silly and amusing to consider. This one is going to cause a small subset of my audience to completely lose their shit. And this will be the only time I'll acknowledge them before going back to ignoring their weird obsession over a single unit like some sort of freak. But much against my better judgment, here's 159 Zangles. And a Helldrake to keep with the bird theming. Now, this is not the worst thing in the world. It has the same vibe as something like All Kroot, but without being good. And playing Thousand Suns without any actual Thousand Suns is an absurd concept. Also, moving 150 Zangles sounds like an absolute goddamn nightmare. I guess this list works if you're really just absolutely sick of painting even more Rubik trim, or maybe you just picked up too many combat patrols or Starbox for Thousand Suns, as Games Workshop for some reason seemed obsessed with pouring these guys into the boxes to pad out the 5 Scarab Cult Terminators that you actually want. Also, this list doesn't have Magnus, so it's the coolest thing ever, and any Thousand Suns list without Magnus is an absolute sham. If only these combat patrols were anything like the best combat patrol ever made. The original Drukhari Combat Patrol was absolutely insane value. A Raider, a Ravager, which could be used as a Raider, an Archon, 5 Incubi, and 10 Cavalites. This box was such a ridiculous deal that if you ever wanted just a Raider or Ravager, it was probably better just to buy another Combat Patrol. And then they got rid of it. Now, to be fair, the new one is also very good and fits more into the Combat Patrol philosophy GW has been going with recently, but it only really works if you want a bunch of homunculus coven units. Unlike Rax, Cavalites are a bread and butter unit in almost any list, and getting extra transports is just so universally useful for the Drukhari. Still, you could technically buy 6 of this new combat patrol, and the only waste would be 3 extra homunculi, which could be easily converted into Archons because this is Drukhari and everything is an Archon. But the old combat patrol was just simply too good. It was so good, in fact, that buying 3 of them gives you just under 1500 points, what is essentially a decent starting off point for any Drukhari army with literally no waste. 4 boxes gives you just over 1800 points of an army that is still insanely functional with only a single Archon model wasted. And a 5th box... Okay, then it gets a little bit much as you start to overload on boats. But seriously, 4 combat patrols for an army list that is, whilst not the greatest thing in the world, is still fairly playable. Especially if you utilize those raiders with the Sky Splinter Assault detachment. Slap Lady Malice and Trazar in there, or a couple of enhancements and mandrakes, and this still works absolutely fine. I cannot understate how bonkers this box was. So I guess now that you can't really do that, you could just do the Skari classic of keep winning tournaments till Void Raven Bombers at 300 points and GW gets rid of flies forever. GW never really did get flies working, did they? I love my Storm Raven, but anytime it gets remotely good, it gets nerfed into the ground for its sins. And I look forward to them getting even further nerfed thanks to the Armored Spear Tip detachment. There really aren't any armies or lists that utilize flyers particularly well. This list doesn't change that. Flyers are still just shit. Brainouts are the masters of teleportation, 2-up save power armor, and having the word psychic repeatedly on every single date sheet for seemingly no good reason. But what happens when that teleportation goes wrong and you're a Grand Master in Nemesis Dread Knight standing there all alone on the battlefield? Well, then you call in the air support. Santic Spearhead lets your vehicles auto-advance 6 inches and have assault on all of their weapons, allowing the cavalry to swoop down and decimate anything that dares be in your path. All those guns on insanely fast, tough platforms. Sure, you can't utilize the teleport part, but who cares when you have all of these giant gunships raining down hellfire on your hapless enemies? Then you realize it's all OC0 and cannot do any action, so it's literally impossible to hold more than one objective at a time. Look, I just wanted an excuse to put a Thunderwing on a list, alright? Yes, and I know by the fact that now this list simply doesn't function because it can't hold anything, breaks my one and only rule, so... Okay, drop a couple of smaller gunships for some Terminators or something. Jumping 15 Paladins out and being able to charge after dropping doesn't sound unappealing, but something that does sound unappealing is Death Guard, the inexorable march of decay. In my mind, this is the most cohesive of all of the 40k factions. Every unit and every rule just works so incredibly well with that slow, unstoppable, plague-ridden flavor. The Shamble Rot Vectorum allows Poxwalkers to become battle line, and you can even add more during the game. That's a whopping 150 Poxwalkers in total. Add in some characters to lead them, including Typhus, as well as Mortarion, because if you aren't using the Demon Primarch of the faction in your list, why fucking bother? The game plan is simple. Slowly walk towards your opponent and watch them rot in your stench-filled aura. But with so many big units slowly marching up the board, you'll have to be careful of sneaky opponents coming from behind. Rather than have to keep some shambling stink zombies in the backline for screening, you can instead just make the notion of being in your deployment zone utterly repugnant. 3 miasmic malignifiers. Each one of these fortifications is made up of 2 parts. One piece is roughly 100 mil and one's roughly 40 mil. They have to be deployed an inch apart, but each one has a 12-inch no deep strike aura. So that can essentially block out the entire backfield from deep strikes, making your deployment zone uninteractable. But what makes this even better is that whilst I was writing this part of the video, I noticed something that I didn't know before. Poxwalkers have infiltrate. What? With that in mind, you probably don't want to have them all with leaders because that will block them from infiltrating. Just 1 or 2 units could be used to block a lot of movement from your opponent. Or you can just flood all 3 objective markers with an insane amount of bodies just immediately. Dealing damage is going to be the main issue, but if you drop Mortarion and a few characters, you could shove a couple of Defilers in there instead. Am I crazy, or is this list not terrible? Apart from having to buy 3 fortifications and also 150 Poxwalkers, this list seems weirdly annoying to play against. It'd be a very weird jail list, and any armies that rely on reserves will potentially struggle. And you know what? It's probably very easily exploitable. It may be something for teams, I guess, but some armies are just going to tear this thing to shreds. And honestly, Death Guard are the quintessential tanky elite army with things like Blightlord and Deathshroud Terminators. If you wanted a Horde army, you'd probably be better off playing something like... But you know what? Not everyone enjoys collecting or playing Horde armies, and there are going to be people who like the Genestealer Cults vibe, but don't want to have to build and paint over 100 downtrodden mutated cultists just to play the faction properly. Fortunately, I have come up with a solution. Just use the Brood Brother Auxilia detachment and slap 2 Baneblades in there. Back that up with a bunch of utility vehicles, and to ensure the model count stays as low as possible, 5 Aberrants and an Abominant. Could not be simpler. Yes, this list sucks, but now that Guard have an actual proper way of using Master Baneblades, I had to try and shoehorn these Titanic Terrors somewhere without it being unremarkable and basic. And turning a Horde army into not a Horde army is nonsense. But if you flipped that script, then you entered the realm of complete insanity, our penultimate category. These lists are completely and utterly insane. Armies of unhinged madness that are crazy in such a unique and hilarious way that I can't help but find them incredibly amusing. For example, if you play Chaos Knights, you probably enjoy the power of giant stomping robots like I do. They're nice and easy to collect and play as you only have a few models to worry about, and so you don't have to try and remember loads of different rules or try to move a ton of models to execute your plans. However, what if you wanted to change things up and try to play with a few more than just 5 or 10 models at once? But you don't want to have to get a completely new army. Introducing this extremely gross Chaos Knights list. With the Iconoclast Fiefdom, you can have up to 500 points of damned units in your list. And separately to that, you can also include 500 points of demon allies. Add in 2 War Dogs and 2 Big Stompers, and you've got yourself 144 models to move around the battlefield. Why would you do that? I have no fucking idea. Maybe you actually want to play an army with the knights as allies, but rather than just 1 big or 3 small knights, you want to have 2 big and 2 small, like you're one of those overachievers in Countdown who tried to pull the 4 large 2 small gambit. But I'm sure some of you out there are proper masochists who think that 144 models just isn't enough. And if that is you, 243. That's the most models I could fit into a list. Kind of. Okay, technically you could get this up to 281 with gargoyles, but that isn't then the most total possible models in one game. If you get the absolute perfect best case scenario, each turn you can return 3d3 plus 9 termagants, maximum of 18, which over 5 rounds, if you go second and lose exactly the right amount of termagants from 3 different units consistently, gives you another 90 for a grand total of 333.
The numbers lie!
As a side note, I've always wanted to know, why is it termed Gants but Horma Gaunts? Why aren't they either both Gants or Gaunts? If you know, please leave me a comment below. I'm aware I could just look this up, but this is engagement mate, and you're going to take it. I don't know if this list is actually physically playable. There are just so many models. Movement trays would help a bit, but even then, trying to maneuver this many models is such a daunting concept. I think the only way to win would be by your opponent getting sick of waiting for your movement phase to finish and leaving. Or breaking their ankle. But perhaps it isn't the number of models that you really care about. Maybe what really gets you going is having a huge variety to play with. Well, look no further than Be'lakor, one of each Chaos God battle line unit, and then every character that costs under 100 points. You can finally use the declaring formation step properly and choose from any number of potential leads for each unit depending on the situation. Could I tell you what characters would be best for what solutions? Absolutely fucking not! There's too many goddamn datasheets, and I'm not smart enough to know what goes where. Good luck keeping all of those different units of weapon profiles in your head on top of all of their datasheet rules, whether they have Lone Op, Deep Strike, Scout, Infiltrate, or what they lead and how that affects the unit they attach to. Make sure to keep a tally of how many enemy models were killed by Nurgle units specifically. That's important, but that only gets you a command point if you haven't already killed a character with the Skull Taker, so make sure to watch out for that as well. And maybe make sure that if the enemy has any Psychers that are within 12 inches of the blue scribes, you don't forget that, so keep that in your head. And that's if they can even attack because of the Changeling's ability. Oh, and the Infernal Enrapturous also has an aura that affects Psychers, so keep that in mind if you want to Venn diagram some poor Librarian. Not to mention the innumerable ways that you can cause battle shot tests, which characters give sustained or lethal or death wounds, and don't forget Be'lakor's 6-inch aura for 18-inch Lone Op, which is great for the characters that already aren't Lone Op, including himself. Basically, this list is a logistical nightmare that will make you feel like your brain has charged headfirst into the warp. So at least the insanity is thematic, I suppose. This list has a lot of individual character models, and those would end up costing quite a lot of cash money. But what if you're someone whose sole purpose in life is to lose as much money as you possibly can as quickly as possible? Maybe you're the kind of person who just loves spending money on frivolous purchases, including buying all these wonderful products at Paul's shop. Maybe you're the kind of person who lives the philosophy of buy high and sell low and have a crippling addiction to the stock market, and someone who, to this day, still holds on to their stocks in GameStop. Or maybe the kind of person who, for some unfathomable reason, known only to yourself, thinks NFTs are cool. If you're that kind of person, then do I have the investment for you. You might think that an utterly ridiculous admech list could only be maximum Castellan robots, and that is a funny list that I actually would love to try out, but it's also a list for cheap, cowardly, dumb bitches.
I say the words, dumb bitches, and you magically appear.
Maximizing Castellan robots is only a measly 312 quid, and that gets you 50 models. And it barely fills out a full 2,000 point army. Why spend such a minuscule amount of dough for so many models when you can instead spend over £1,000 on just 27 models, and another 100 quid for 4 characters? If the Legend of Zelda's taught me anything, it's that chickens are the deadliest creatures on the planet. Therefore, you cannot go wrong with the chicken farm. Frustratingly, this list is only 6 models less than 36 Centurions and Ancient, whilst having more units which are faster, have more wounds, and a 5 of Inbun save, and get access to sustains and lethals, and crit 5s, and can potentially store command points. But they can't go through walls, which isn't that much of an issue, as because Centurions are so goddamn slow, most of the time, neither can they. 3 leggy boys round out the 30 pairs of lovely legs, with a techno-archaeologist here to make the list actually legal, because you need a warlord, and Sidonia scout rushes are too cool to be doing paperwork. This honestly isn't the worst list to play. It looks kind of functional. It does a decent amount of damage and moves pretty well, but also that's a lot of goddamn money. That leaves just one category remaining, the spectacularly stupid category, and it contains only a single faction. Now, you might be thinking that the joke here is that because I have a somewhat lower opinion of Imperial Guard, any list would be spectacularly stupid as yet another dig at Guard players. But please, give me a little bit of respect, okay? I already made that joke for Imperial Agents, and there are only like 6 players in the entire world, so I'm not too worried about the backlash. Guard players, however, ooh. No, this is a genuine list that I think is not only completely preposterous, but also genuinely hilarious, and I kind of want to run it because it is the antithesis of everything I believe in. And what makes this worse is that this is still the same number of units as 36 Centurions, 6 Rogal Dawns, and a Knight Lancer. Hammer of the Emperor works perfectly for this, and with a couple of enhancements, it's exactly 2,000 points. Oh, God damn it, when did the Rogal Dawns get nerfed? I mean, good, they deserved it, but fuck's sake, man. I actually wanted to run this list. It was gonna be so funny. This is gonna be such a good bit. Oh, fuck's sake, man. Even just removing the Lancer and the enhancements doesn't allow any other big knight, because that's 5 points too much. Like, that was perfectly calculated to fuck on me specifically. Man, that's so disappointing. Ruined the whole punchline for this video. No, you know what? This isn't on me, okay? Just because I should have checked the list before I made this video, because I made this list a while ago when it was actually 2,000 points. That's not my fault. This is your fault, Guard players. That's it. I'm done. This is the final straw. This is really one step too far. We had our fun, okay? Our goofy little rivalry. It was a laugh, right? Oh, Paul hates Guard. Oh, yes, Commissar, that one right there. Haha. It was all just a bit of banter. But thanks to your stupid army with these stupid models, you've taken away the single most Imperial Guard-based joy from my life. So, Guard players, go fuck yourself. If you won't let me have any fun, then you can take your ridiculous, bottomless bullshit tanks and shove them right out at your Astra Militarum, you pathetic, goddamn, useless piece of shit, motherfucking bastard! I hate you! If you have any ideas for ridiculous lists, I'd love to hear all about them in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. It allows me to keep making these kind of stupid videos. If you want to support further, you become a member or patron like all of these lovely people, or buy my merch, so you can get something tangible out of your money, like this body pillow that you can snuggle up to and lovingly caress at night as you drift off to sleep whilst it watches you, patiently waiting for the perfect time to strike.